The Australian or Commonwealth Government is the federal or national government of Australia. A federal parliamentary constitutional monarchy. It is abbreviated to 100th. And the judicial, the legislative branch, the federal parliament, is made up of two chambers, the House of Representatives and the Senate. The House of Representatives has 151 members, each representing an individual electoral district of about 165,000 people. The Senate has 76 members, 12 from each of the 6 states and 2 each from Australia's internal territories. The Australian Capital Territory and Northern Territory. The Australian monarch, currently Queen Elizabeth II, is represented by the Governor-General. The Australian government in its executive capacity is formed by the party or coalition with a majority in the House of Representatives, with the Prime Minister being the parliamentary leader who has the support of a majority of members. In the House of Representatives, the Prime Minister is formally appointed to the role by the Governor-General. The government is based in the nation's capital, Canberra, in the Australian Capital Territory. The head offices of all 14 federal departments lie in Canberra, along with Parliament House and the High Court. The judicial branch of government, headed by the High Court of Australia, is independent of the legislative and executive branch, and ensures that government acts according to the Constitution and law. As a founding member of the Commonwealth and a former British colony before Federation in 1901, Australia's constitution is influenced heavily by the British Westminster system of government, as well as the United States Constitution. Section 1 of the Australian Constitution creates a democratic legislature, the bicameral Parliament of Australia, which consists of the monarch and 2 chambers of Parliament, the Senate and the House of Representatives. Section 51 of the Constitution provides for the Australian government's legislative powers and allocates certain powers and responsibilities to the federal government. All remaining responsibilities are retained by the 6 states. Further, each state has its own constitution, so that Australia has 7 devolved parliaments, none of which can encroach on the functions of any other. The High Court of Australia arbitrates on any disputes which arise between the federal government and the states and territories, or among the states and territories themselves. The Parliament of Australia can propose changes to the Constitution. To become effective, the proposals must be put to a referendum of all Australians of voting age and must receive a double majority, a majority of all votes, and a majority of votes in a majority of states. The Australian Constitution also provides that the states can agree to refer any of their powers to the federal government. This may be achieved by way of an amendment to the Constitution via referendum. More commonly, powers may be transferred by passing other acts of legislation which authorize the transfer, and such acts require the legislative agreement of all the state governments involved. This transfer legislation may have a sunset clause, a legislative provision that nullifies the transfer of power after a specified period, at which point the original division of power is restored. In addition, Australia has several territories, 2 of which are self-governing: the Australian Capital Territory and the Northern Territory. While these territories' legislatures exercise powers devolved to them by the Australian government, the Parliament of Australia has the authority to override their legislation and to alter their powers. Australian citizens in these territories are represented by members of both houses of the Parliament of Australia, albeit with less representation in the Senate. Norfolk Island was self-governing from 1979 until 2015, although it was never represented as such in the Parliament of Australia. The other inhabited territories, Jervis Bay, Christmas Island and the Cocos Islands, have never been self-governing. The federal nature and the structure of the Parliament of Australia were the subject of protracted negotiations among the colonies during the drafting of the Constitution. The House of Representatives is elected on a basis that reflects the differing populations of the states. Thus, New South Wales has 48 members while Tasmania has only 5. But the Senate is elected on a basis of equality among the states. All states elect 12 senators, regardless of population. This was intended to allow the senators of the smaller states to form a majority and thus be able to amend or reject bills originating in the House of Representatives, the Australian Capital Territory and the Northern Territory, the only territories represented in Senate. Each elect only two. The third level of governance is local government, in the form of shires, towns or cities. The councils of these areas are comp.